Hello, my friends. Greetings to all of you in India and the world. This is Professor A.G. Iyer. I am the editor-in-chief of Markeconomy Journal, and I'm also the president of the Markeconomy Foundation. I'm also the author of India Brandish Superpowering Brand India 2022, which first came in 2003, has done 4 editions, and the last edition is the updated digital one, which happened in the year 2017. I'm also the author of Bhutan Brandished, Saga of the 21st Century Kingdom Democracy and GGHH Economy, which was released on 19th of November 2019 at the Royal University of Bhutan on the birth anniversary of His Majesty the 4th Druk Gyalpo, the Honorable 4th King of Bhutan, Sri Jigme Singye Wangchuk. And that's one of my most favorite books. And it's like destiny that if I look back at that of November 2019, I must say that I reflect the world and look at the concept of GDP versus gross national happiness. For India, I coined something very interesting, and I'm very clear that that coinage is gross national harmony and happiness. And today, this topic becomes very relevant. It becomes more relevant in the scenario of the world that will emerge post-COVID 2020. Why I call 2020? Because the disease can be called as COVID 2019 or COVID-19 or NCO, but the period of the economy that sets in post-May 2020 has to be addressed as a post-COVID world 2020. I coined a word called, we are challenged by one idea. In fact, I coined this word few, days back, or let's say in the month of March, and I called the emerging scenario as a CORONACESSION. CORONACESSION, something like a recession. What we were looking at, what the world was staring at, was already a very tough economic situation. If you look at the 193 odd economies of the world contributing to an idea called the gross world product, then you would notice that the gross world product for 2019 was upwards of 85 trillion US dollars. And that was not that did not look like getting achieved, because the actual situation that we were actually hovering around was a 3% drop at roughly around, I would say, about 81 trillion US dollars. And the previous year too, if you look at the whole scene, there has been a consistent drop, from the higher levels to lower levels. We did recover a little bit, but it was not a real economic recovery in any fashion. So we were already seeing a world growth rate which was not working in the region of more than about 2 to 3%, and an average growth rate of 3% for the global economy. That's what we were looking at, and that was also a best case scenario. And what happened in that period is we just went through 2019 through the motions with a lot of rearrangement of the GDP growth rate and a type of I would say a stagflation that set in. Stagflation is a condition where we don't see extraordinary growth rates, but we also don't see a dip, but we see the economy not moving in the manner it should move. Most of the world economies were struggling, in 2009, and it did not need a worse situation than getting this hit from the coronavirus to be badly, I would say, badly debilitated at this point of time. If you look at it, the current scenario, without mincing words, would be a world that is looking at recession today. And today we saw Germany has already announced a kind of a recession scenario. For India, the International Monetary Fund, a growing economy, a $3 trillion economy, it has been predicted that we would only see a 1.9% growth rate, which means size, and probably we would return 5.5% plus the next year. My own assessment is maybe India would only see a growth rate of about 1.5%, and that should not be alarming at this point. It should not set alarm bells ringing, but rather we should be looking at what we do post May 2020, which is the most important point. And that May 2020 is not only for India. This May 2020 scenario has to be put across the whole world. There are various scenarios that come in, the assumptions come like this, that if the coronavirus and its impact starts receding, and we see a reasonable summer in Asia until the next lot of catching up with the winter and the seasonal change in the month of September, October. And if the best case scenario, the virus does not return. But I will never take that scenario. And neither I would take a worst case scenario. I would take a scenario where the world has got accustomed or has got the idea that they have to work in a post-COVID scenario where world will not be the same. No organization or the economic system will see the classical engagement of its people or the resources in 100% fashion, but we would see it being deployed in a very effective or strategic manner. For example, manpower assets, physical presence would be relooked at. The whole world would not see, because we have seen suddenly when the lockdown happened, there were some gains. One of the biggest gains in the lockdown is that we are seeing the vehicular pollution clearly not there, and this whole bogey of the thermal power plants polluting the world more has gone out, because it's now visible that it is the vehicular pollution that is actually damaging the environment of the world. And why I say that, it's as an engineering, as an internal combustion engineer from the beginning, which was my best subject, I always see that the world will get damaged when you run the vehicles at very low speeds in our urban centers. Because what is happening precisely is we are seeing that most of the vehicles don't touch about 10 to 12 kilometers in the urban centers, and even in the highways we are only, when we get the freeways, then we run the vehicles the transport sector sees some speed, and we need about 60 to 80 kilometers per hour to get the best fuel efficiency and the lowest carbon emissions. So I will not go into the technical part, but it's very clear that automotive pollution was seen as was seen definitely as a challenge, and now it is proven beyond doubt that that is creator of the pollution. And the other side is the way we travel worldwide, because we directly impinge the emission and we directly put our emission gases in our international flight travel into the ionosphere. So that's another portion that has suddenly reduced. So you see clearing of the skies, you see a better environment, you see there's a kind of a revival of sorts, while the virus itself has had devastating impacts on countries like America, the US and Italy and Spain and France and Germany. Whole of Europe has been impacted. So we are seeing, and now it's moving to Africa, it will definitely hit Australia. So we will see a lot of things. But there are good stories. There's a Korea story, there's a New Zealand story, there's a Singapore story, and these stories are there for sure. Okay, and in spite of all this, the major challenge for all of us, all these economies, is basically how to bring back everything. It may not be the same. The way we do things may not be the same. Maybe we'll look more towards renewable energy. I'm a champion of renewable energy. I'm the president of the Renewable Energy Promotion Association, and I would champion the cause of renewable energy. So we may see more traction towards renewable energy, but the fundamentals are clear that we will redesign the way we run this world and drive the energy part of the economy in a very different way, and economy itself in a very different way. So is there a model? Is there a real model that exists which is different from the models that we have been following, and especially the model of a gross domestic product and then summating up to a gross world product? Do we have something very different from these ideas? The answer is yes. It's a very small country tucked up close to us, and our neighbor and probably our best friend for all times. It is Bhutan. And the hope comes because it's the only carbon negative economy of the world. The hope comes from there because Bhutan has not too many cases, and Bhutan has fairly been also, while it is landlocked with India, and it's got a certain kind of, I would say, conservative economy and a closed system, depends a lot on its tourism and other things, and also a lot of hydropower development from India, which actually drives already 12% of the GDP, but would drive more maybe around 20% after the new project of Mangdechu, which India commissioned just in 2019, August. All this is fine. But what is the lesson? The lesson is a country which has got more than 70% of its cover in wildlife, and it has sustained its economic part of it. And then the protection of the environment, and at the same time working on a very different model, which is called the gross national happiness model. So what is there for India? So can we have a hybrid? Yes, India is the best example, because we can take the Bhutan model and look at another factor, because we are a world within a world with so many communities around, and therefore the gross national happiness was changed by me, and I referred to that in my book called Bhutan Brandish as the gross national harmony and happiness. And is there a system for the world itself? Yes. The world can, instead of looking at gross world product, look at a gross global happiness and gross global harmony and happiness model. So first we can look at gross global happiness, but we can look at a larger idea called the gross global harmony and happiness. Why the word harmony is very important at this juncture? See, we have different communities, we have different religions, we have different cultures, we have very different races, we have different sets of people who live together, and we make this planet happen and make it a happening place. We are challenged by this situation where we are talking of lockdowns and social distancing. Technically it's physical distancing, but we are talking of social distancing. But when in the Friedmanish era, where we talk about the earth is flat and we're all connected with the digital economy, then I don't think we would use the word social distancing as such, but it's more of a physical distancing. Socially we are still connected, through the internet, through the digital economy, through the way I am communicating with all of you. All of this gives us still hope to operate the world in a manner which will be different from what we looked at it in the past. Like the production centers would be centers which may limit the number of workforce, but at the same time may have more automation to come with. But then there has to be a good blend. You have to engage the human community. Agriculture, I'm not saying that it will be mechanized in a big way, but there will be partial mechanization of agriculture. At the same time, the labor, like in India, almost 50 to 60% of our population depends on the agricultural economy. So the engagement of the people in the agriculture economy will be very important as such. The same way our industrial labor, our production centers which engages in the public, that also has to be taken care of. And what we need to do is we have to redesign this entire factor. We have to look at things very differently. That means we may have to operate at a level which would be around 30% or 40% of what we are operating for an ideal situation, that we keep and continue this social distancing, and at the same time we move the economy. So a very pragmatic approach, I would not say a conservative, but a reasonably cautious and calculated approach to driving the economy, while at the same time avoiding any health, crisis further. Because we are going to face this challenge for sure in winter. The COVID virus is not going to go quickly, and it's, as I continue to say, as our team in Marconomy Foundation has done a great job with VaxBio, and maybe other people are working, but we are closest and fastest, and we are attempting to bring a vaccine quickly to India and rest of the world. That's our promise that remains. I repeat it here. But till that time, that will still take some time. It would be around October or November that would be prepared. October is the day I feel we'll prepare. But these months, from May onwards, I would say, if we presume that 15th May, we can start unlocking ourselves back to economic activity, then by end of May, we would just come to work in a certain new fashion, right? But then June, July, August and September, the 4 months are very critical for the world. Before the next winter session, especially India as a very important bulwark or holder of the whole thing, will have to play a very important role. US have to play a very important role. Germany has to play a very important role. France has to play an important role. Australia will have to play an important role. These economies have to play a very critical and crucial role to ensure that the new world order sees a revival of sorts or resurgence of sort. Maybe this year, 2020, we can say that like Germany has already declared recession. I would not say recession, but a sort of a slowdown, which will be because of the situation, the health situation that is created because of COVID, may happen. But it could be a complete reverse, that we lay a new world order for the future of economies on a model which looks at people's healthcare, people's development, their happiness, their harmony, a completely new model. We can make a completely new mathematical model to find how we can measure happiness, how we can measure interdependence, how we can bring a situation where the economy's interdependence looks different than just measuring through money and resources. Rather, we look at other resources, growth of the human being. Let's keep the human being at the center of this whole thing. And also, I would say the flora and fauna at the center of this whole thing. Let's care more for the environment. Let's go more green. These are the things that probably we need to unlock and look at in the next few days. And I'm an optimist. I again repeat, I'm an eternal optimist. I look at the world doing much better. And provided we all work together, all the countries will have to work in very different directions. Yes, there is criticism of the World Health Organization at this point. There is a lot of issues, but all these organizations need to introspect. They have to correct their mistakes. They have to correct the course. Their relevance in the modern times must be definitely discussed. What is the new type of world order that we need? The United Nations itself, what's the role it's going to play? Are we going to drive the same limited set of economies with a basket of currencies that we see? Do we still continue the old Bretton Woods model of a fixed model of currencies, then convert to flexible model because of gold reserves of economy? Do we need to rethink on all these things? My idea is yes, we need to rethink the whole model altogether. Detailing all this will always happen at a later date, but I'm just putting through this video a new thought that all of us need to look anew, afresh at the world order, and that I believe is to move towards a completely new idea called the gross global harmony and happiness, derived from the gross national happiness concept of Bhutan and expanded by India in my book Bhutan Brandished as the gross national harmony and happiness. I think this is the way forward for the whole world, and it needs a lot of green and renewable drive of energy intensity, and therefore renewables will play a good role. And we must take the example of a carbon negative, the world's only carbon negative country, Bhutan. And then we must all try to see how carbon neutral at least we can become. If not carbon negative, we go towards the carbon neutrality and save the environment. Let's be very clear that viruses prosper in an environment which is polluted, in an environment that is not conducive to the human growth, where the air quality index is not breathable literally. So let's keep the world breathable. Let's look at new designs. Let's look at renewable, the economy driven by renewable. Let's look at a transport economy which sees the challenge of the electric vehicles and comfort mass transit system. Why I use comfort? Because now you can't flood your transport with people. You have to keep physical distancing in the transport sector. And all these things together, a very new model will emerge of interdependence, of working together, and of a kind of a sustainable living, rather than going only towards a hardcore capitalist model. Capitalism is important. We need to have capitalism, but we need to steer clear of materialism as such. So that very subtle difference between capitalism or abject greed versus which goes as materialism, towards a balanced form of capitalism tinged with socialism. I mean to say, let's not mistake, socialism cannot be mixed with communism. Communism is different. That ideology is a very different ideology. But socialism, whether you are a capitalist, you can be a capitalist socialist. So I call it a democratic capitalism tinged with socialism. In short form, it is DCTS, that the world has to bring into order, and then work towards the gross global harmony and happiness. With this little idea, with this idea of rethinking that make you all go positive and rethink, I say all the best, my best wishes for the world order, my best wishes for the people of the world, my best wishes from India. Jai Hind.